My children put me in a nursing home, telling me with tears in their eyes, "You'll be better there, Mom." A month later, they found out just how much better I could be, but it was not in the way they had ever imagined. The silence was the first thing that truly settled into my bones, a cold and creeping thing that was nothing like the peaceful quiet I had cherished in my own home. For 52 years, that house in Savannah, Georgia had been my world, a place I had shared with my beloved Bobby. Its silence had always been warm, filled with the ghosts of laughter, the echoes of our son's running feet, the phantom scent of Bobby's pipe tobacco lingering in his favorite armchair. The silence at Willow Creek Senior Residence was different. It was the sterile, humming silence of fluorescent lights and industrial-grade disinfectant. It was the silence of forgotten people, a hollow vessel waiting to be filled with the drone of a television or the rhythmic, lonely squeak of a nurse's rubber-soled shoes on linoleum. My sons, Joe and Harry, had called it a residence, a word that felt like a cheap coat of paint slapped over a rotting wall. It was a home, but not my home. It was a place where life came to wait, and I, at 74, had been delivered to its doorstep like an unwanted parcel. I remembered the day they brought it up, the words wrapped in such careful, cloying concern that I almost believed them. We were in my kitchen, the heart of the house Bobby and I had built with our own hands and hearts. The late afternoon sun streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, the same way it had for decades. Joe, my eldest, had his hand over mine on the worn oak table. His touch, which once offered comfort, felt clammy and prescriptive. "Mom, we've been worried," he began, his voice a low, serious hum. Harry, always the follower, nodded in perfect synchronicity, his expression a carefully rehearsed mask of solemnity. "You're all alone in this big house. What if you fall? What if something happens?" Sarah, Joe's wife, sat beside him, her posture rigid, her smile a thin, brittle thing. She was the architect of this particular symphony of concern. I knew that even then. Her ambition had always been sharp, metallic taste in the air whenever she was near. "Alice, darling," she cooed, the endearment sounding like an insult. "It's about your safety. We found this wonderful place, Willow Creek. It has round-the-clock care, activities, other people your age. You deserve a rest." A rest. As if my life had been some great burden I was finally being unyoked from. I had protested. Of course. My voice felt small and reedy in my own kitchen. "But this is my home," I'd said, looking around at the familiar blue and white tiles Bobby had painstakingly laid, the copper pots he'd bought me for our 20th anniversary hanging from the rack above the stove. "All my memories are here." Harry had sighed, a long-suffering sound he had perfected over the years. "Mom, memories don't call an ambulance if you break a hip. We're doing this because we love you." Love. They used that word like a cudgel, a heavy, blunt instrument to beat down my resistance. They spoke of my forgetfulness, turning a misplaced set of keys into a symptom of cognitive decline. They mentioned my occasional arthritis flare-ups as proof of my impending frailty. They painted a picture of me as a helpless, crumbling old woman who was a burden they were desperate to lighten. In the end, I was too tired to fight. The two men I had raised, the boys whose scraped knees I had bandaged and whose nightmares I had soothed, stood before me as strangers in familiar bodies, their minds already made up. I felt the walls of my own life closing in, and I simply nodded. I let their manufactured love wash over me, a cold tide that pulled me out from the shore I had known my entire life. The first week at Willow Creek was a blur of beige walls, bland food, and the relentless, cheerful tyranny of the activities director, a woman named Brenda who seemed to believe that infantilizing the elderly was a form of therapy. My room was small and smelled faintly of bleach and despair. The window looked out onto a brick wall, a constant, unyielding reminder of my confinement. My sons and their wives visited that first Sunday, bringing a potted plant that looked as miserable as I felt. They chattered brightly about how settled I looked, how cozy my room was. They didn't notice the tremor in my hands or the way my eyes kept drifting to the brick wall. They stayed for exactly 45 minutes, checked their watches, and left with promises to call every day. The calls came at first. They were brief, dutiful check-ins. How are you, Mom? Eating well? Made any friends? They weren't conversations, they were checklists. They didn't want to hear about the woman down the hall who cried for her husband all night, or the way the food tasted like cardboard, or the profound, soul-crushing loneliness that descended every evening when the lights were dimmed. They wanted to hear that their decision was the right one, that their conscience was clear. So I gave them what they wanted. I'm fine, dear, I would say, my voice a hollow echo of itself. Everything is just fine. After the second week, the calls dwindled to every other day, then a few times a week. Their lives, they explained, were just so busy. It was during the third week that the true cold began to seep in. It wasn't just the institutional chill of the building, it was a coldness in my soul. I felt myself fading, becoming as beige and indistinct as the walls around me. I was Alice, Bobby's wife, Joe and Harry's mother, a woman who had once hosted 60 people for Thanksgiving and could bake a lemon meringue pie that could make angels weep. Now, I was just a resident in room 21B, a name on a chart, a problem that had been solved and filed away. The betrayal was a physical weight in my chest, a dense, heavy stone that made it hard to breathe. It wasn't just that they had put me here, it was the lie they had dressed it in. They hadn't done it for me. They had done it for them. To free themselves of the perceived obligation of an aging mother. One dreary Tuesday afternoon, when the rain was streaking down the brick wall outside my window like gray tears, a familiar face appeared in my doorway. It was Thomas, my nephew, my late sister's boy. I had practically raised him after my sister, God rest her soul, had fallen ill. He was more of a son to me than my own two boys had been in years. His face, usually so open and cheerful, was clouded with confusion and worry. Aunt Alice, what on earth are you doing here? I went by the house to drop off some vegetables for my garden, and a neighbor told me you'd moved. He said the word moved as if it were a euphemism for something terrible. Seeing him was like a dam breaking inside me. The carefully constructed facade of I'm fine crumbled into a million pieces. The tears I hadn't allowed myself to shed came in a flood, hot and bitter. I told him everything. I told him about the conversation in the kitchen, the carefully worded concerns, the feeling of being managed and dismissed. I told him about the sterile silence, the bland food, the brick wall. I told him about the dwindling phone calls and the ache of being forgotten. He didn't interrupt. He just sat on the edge of the uncomfortable visitor's chair, his large, warm hand covering my trembling ones, and he listened. When I was finished, his eyes were blazing with a fury that warmed me to my core. No, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Absolutely not. This is not happening. If this story has already made your heart ache for Alice, take a second to like this video and subscribe. It helps these stories reach more people who believe in justice and second chances. Thomas became my lifeline. He visited every single day after that. He brought me books, home-baked cookies that tasted of freedom, and news from the outside world. He railed against my sons, calling them names I was too polite to even think. He made me laugh, a rusty, unfamiliar sound. With each visit, a little bit of the old Alice began to flicker back to life. He was the one who first became suspicious. It doesn't make sense, Aunt Alice, he said one afternoon, pacing the small room like a caged tiger. The house is perfectly fine. You were perfectly fine. There's something else going on here. They're up to something. I had wanted to dismiss it, to believe that my sons were merely misguided and thoughtless, not malicious. But a small, cold seed of doubt had already been planted. The following Saturday, Thomas went to my house. He told me he was just going to water my prize-winning roses, which he knew I was worried about. He had a key I'd given him years ago, one he used when he would check on the place for me and Bobby when we went on our rare vacations. He was gone for hours. When he returned to Willow Creek that evening, His face was pale, his jaw set like granite. He closed the door to my room and sat down heavily. He was holding a sheaf of papers. "I went into the study to find the vase for the roses I cut for you," he began, his voice tight. "Your desk was a mess. Papers everywhere. And I found this." He slid a document across the small table between us. It was a loan agreement from a commercial bank. The borrowers were listed as J&H Enterprises, and the amount was staggering. It was a business loan, and from the dates, it was clear it had gone into default. My breath hitched. J&H Enterprises was my son's latest grand scheme, a failed attempt at a high-end landscaping business. They had always been dreamers, my boys, but their dreams always required someone else's money, usually mine. But this amount, it was more than I could ever imagine. Then, Thomas pushed another paper forward. It was a property appraisal for my house, dated just 2 weeks ago. And tucked beneath it was a preliminary listing agreement with a local real estate agent. The agreement wasn't signed, but the intent was as clear as a pane of glass. My blood ran cold. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying, sickening snap. The sudden concern for my safety, the rush to get me into a facility, the dwindling contact. It wasn't about me at all. It was never about me. It was about the house. They needed to sell my home to pay for their failure. The grief I had felt before was a pale, watery thing compared to the emotion that now consumed me. This was a new feeling, hot and sharp and utterly clarifying. It was rage. A pure, cold, diamond-hard rage that burned away all the sadness and confusion. They hadn't just put me away. They had tried to erase me. They were going to sell my life, my history, my sanctuary, everything Bobby and I had ever built, to cover their own incompetence and greed. They had looked at their mother and seen not a person, but an obstacle, an asset to be liquidated. The woman in room 21B died in that moment. A new woman was born, one forged in the fires of the deepest betrayal imaginable. I looked at Thomas, my fierce, loyal nephew. "Get me a lawyer," I said, and my voice did not shake. "And then, get me out of here." The next few days were a whirlwind of clandestine activity. Thomas found a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Miller, who specialized in elder law. Thomas brought her to Willow Creek, introducing her as his friend. We met in a small, stuffy common room, the air thick with the smell of overbrewed coffee. I laid out the whole story, the documents Thomas had found spread out before us. Ms. Miller listened intently, her expression growing colder with every word I spoke. When I finished, she tapped a perfectly manicured nail on the loan agreement. "This is classic," she said, her voice devoid of sympathy for my sons. "Textbook financial elder abuse. They isolate the parent, create a narrative of incompetence, and then move to seize the assets. The fact that they haven't gotten you to sign anything yet is our saving grace." She explained my rights, the power I still held. The house was in my name and my name alone. Bobby had made sure of that years ago, a prescient act of protection I was only now beginning to understand. My sons had no legal right to sell it without my consent or a court-ordered conservatorship, which, she assured me, they would never get now. The plan was simple, elegant, and utterly ruthless. Step 1 was to reclaim my autonomy. Ms. Miller drafted a letter on my behalf, delivered by courier to both Joe and Harry. It was a formal revocation of any and all permissions they might have assumed they had regarding my health or finances. It informed them that all future communication was to go through her office. It was a declaration of war, delivered on crisp, expensive letterhead. Step 2 was my liberation. Thomas arranged everything. While my sons were reeling from the lawyer's letter, he checked me out of Willow Creek. The staff didn't hand me over lightly this time. They required documentation and confirmation from Ms. Miller's office, verifying that I had full legal capacity and autonomy. When they finally released me, I walked out of that beige prison and into the bright, clean air of a new morning, and I felt as though I was breathing for the first time in a month. Walking back into my own home was an experience so profound it brought me to my knees. The moment the front door opened, the familiar scent of lemon polish, old books, and dried roses washed over me. It was the smell of my life. Thomas had aired the place out, and a vase of my own pink roses sat on the hall table. I ran my hand along the smooth, cool wood of the banister that Bobby had sanded and stained himself. I sank into his armchair, the worn leather sighing as it took my weight, and I wept. But these were not the tears of a victim. They were the tears of a queen returning to her castle. The rage was still there, but now it was a tool, a source of fuel. I was no longer a frail old woman. I was a fortress. As Ms. Miller had predicted, the hornet's nest had been kicked. My phone began to ring incessantly. First Joe, then Harry. I let the answering machine take the calls, my own voice from a happier time filling the silence before their frantic, angry messages began. Mom, what is going on? We got a letter from some lawyer. Call me back immediately. Harry's was more panicked. Mom, you can't just leave the home. It's not safe. What were you thinking? This is Thomas's fault, isn't it? He's putting ideas in your head. They sounded like thwarted children, their tones a jarring mix of feigned concern and raw, naked fury. Their control had been wrested from them, and they were flailing. Meanwhile, Thomas began receiving tense messages from his cousins. Joe accused him of meddling in family business. Harry sent a bitter text. You've turned Mom against us. You'll regret this. Thomas didn't tell me at first. He didn't want to add to my pain. But I could see the conflict in his eyes. One evening, as we sat in the living room, he finally confessed. Aunt Alice, I love you like a mother. But Joe and Harry, they're my family too. This is tearing everything apart. I looked at him, my heart both aching and proud. You did the right thing, Thomas, I said softly. Doing the right thing never ruins a family. It reveals who really belong to it. He nodded, the tension easing just enough for him to smile again. The climax came 2 days later. Sarah, Joe's wife, had apparently scheduled an appointment with a real estate agent to walk through the property and finalize the listing agreement. They were arrogant enough to believe my lawyer's letter was just a bluff, a senile woman's confused tantrum. They believed I was still locked away in my beige room, staring at a brick wall. They had no idea I was home. Thomas and I were waiting in the living room when we saw the car pull up. Joe, Sarah, and a woman with a clipboard and a painfully bright blazer got out. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drumbeat of fear and exhilaration. Thomas put a steadying hand on my shoulder. You've got this, Aunt Alice, he whispered. Joe used his key to open the front door. He stepped inside, a smug, proprietary look on his face, and began his spiel to the agent. As you can see, the entryway is quite spacious. Hardwood floors throughout. He stopped dead. His eyes widened in disbelief as he saw me, sitting in Bobby's armchair, a cup of tea steaming gently in my hands. Sarah and the agent bumped into him from behind. Sarah let out a small, strangled gasp. The agent just looked utterly confused. Mom? Joe stammered, his face draining of all color. What are you doing here? I took a slow, deliberate sip of my tea before I answered. I looked from his face to Sarah's, then to the bewildered agent. I live here, I said, my voice calm and as solid as the oak tree in the front yard. The better question is, what are you doing here, Joseph? And who is this woman? Sarah found her voice first, a high-pitched, venomous hiss. Alice, you gave us a scare. You should be at Willow Creek, where you're safe. I turned my cool gaze on her. I was never unsafe in my own home, Sarah, but I have come to realize I was unsafe in the presence of my own family. The real estate agent began to back away slowly, her professional smile frozen on her face. Perhaps I should come back another time, she murmured. Perhaps you should. I agreed, never taking my eyes off my son and his wife. Once the agent had scurried back to her car, the pretense shattered completely. How could you do this? Joe exploded, his face now a mottled red. We were trying to help you, and we were trying to fix a problem. My house is not the solution to your problems, Joseph, I said, my voice rising with a strength I didn't know I possessed. My home, the place your father and I built, is not a bank account for you to plunder to pay for your foolish mistakes. I saw the loan papers. I saw the appraisal. Did you really think I was so far gone that I wouldn't find out? Harry arrived then, screeching to a halt behind the agent's car, having been summoned by a frantic text. He ran in, looking from my face to Joe's, his expression one of pure panic. Mom, please, you have to understand, he pleaded. We were desperate. The business, everything was going to be lost. And so you decided to sacrifice me instead? I stood up, the teacup rattling slightly in its saucer, the only sign of the storm raging inside me. You decided your mother was disposable. You would sell her home from under her, leave her to rot in a sterile room, all so you wouldn't have to face the consequences of your own actions. You speak of love, of concern. There was no love in what you did. There was only greed and cowardice, the deepest, most unforgivable betrayal. I looked at the two men standing before me, these strangers who wore my son's faces. I saw them not as my children, but as the weak, entitled men they had become. The love I had for them was still there, a deep and painful ache, but it was now irrevocably tangled with contempt. Get out, I said, the words quiet but carrying the weight of a final judgment. Get out of my house. Your key will no longer work by the end of the day. All communication will go through Ms. Miller. You are not welcome here. They left. There was more yelling, more pleading, more accusations, but I stood my ground, a silent, immovable statue in my own living room. Thomas stood beside me, a silent, formidable guard. When the door finally closed behind them, a profound silence fell over the house. But this time, it was not the cold, sterile silence of Willow Creek. It was the warm, breathing silence of victory. It was the silence of peace. The weeks that followed were a time of rebuilding, not just the locks on my doors, but the very foundations of my life. The legalities were handled swiftly by Ms. Miller. My sons, faced with their debts and without the easy solution of my house, were forced to declare bankruptcy. Their grand business venture collapsed, and with it, their comfortable lifestyles. I heard through the grapevine that Joe and Sarah had to sell their own oversized house. Harry and his wife moved into a small apartment. They tried to contact me, sending letters filled with self-pity and blame, but I gave them all to Ms. Miller unopened. The fortress walls were holding. But reclaiming my house was only half the battle. Reclaiming my heart was a much harder war to wage. The anger that had served me so well began to curdle into a bitter resentment that sat in my stomach day and night. The betrayal played on a loop in my mind, a constant, tormenting film. I found myself becoming suspicious, withdrawn. I was free, but I wasn't at peace. Thomas, with his gentle wisdom, saw the toll it was taking. Aunt Alice, he said one afternoon as we were tending my roses, you won. You got your home back. Don't let them take your peace, too. I looked at him, that sweet boy who had risked his relationship with his cousins to save me. He was the bridge between what I had lost and what I could still rebuild. And yet, even he had paid a price. Joe and Harry had cut him off completely. They sent venomous texts, spread rumors in the family, and called him a manipulator. He bore it with quiet strength, though sometimes I'd catch the shadow of sadness in his eyes. I reached over, took his hand, and said softly, "They may have lost everything, Thomas, but I gained back something far more precious, my dignity."
And you gained me.
That's family enough. He smiled, eyes bright with emotion. Always, Aunt Alice. He suggested I talk to someone, a professional. He knew a therapist, a woman named Cassidy, who he said was good at helping people put the pieces back together. My first meeting with Cassidy was daunting. I sat in a comfortable chair opposite a woman with kind eyes and a calm, reassuring presence. I felt foolish, a 74-year-old woman talking about her feelings like a teenager. But as I began to speak, the story poured out of me once more, this time not with the cold rage of a warrior, but with the deep, ragged pain of a mother whose heart had been broken by her own children. Cassidy listened, just as Thomas had, but she asked questions that gently probed the tender spots. She helped me see that my son's betrayal was not a reflection of my worth, but of their own profound weakness and moral decay. She helped me unpack a lifetime of my own enabling behavior, of making excuses for them, of giving too much and asking for too little in return. I had taught them that I was a resource to be used, not a person to be cherished. The anger you feel is a healthy response, Alice, she told me during one session. It's a shield. It protected you and gave you the strength to fight back. But a shield is heavy. You can't carry it forever. Eventually, you have to find a way to set it down. The word she used was forgiveness, and I recoiled from it. Forgive them? I asked, my voice sharp. After what they did? Never. Cassidy smiled gently. Forgiveness isn't about them, Alice. It's not about letting them off the hook or saying what they did was okay. It will never be okay. Forgiveness is about you. It's about releasing their power over you. It's about letting go of the poison of resentment so that you can heal. It was a long, arduous process. There were days I left her office feeling lighter, and days I left feeling the full, crushing weight of my grief all over again. Cassidy gave me tools. She had me write letters to my sons that I would never send, filling pages and pages with every ounce of my rage and pain until there was nothing left to say. She encouraged me to reconnect with old friends, to join a book club, to take a pottery class. She helped me rediscover the woman I was outside of being a wife and a mother. I was Alice, a woman who loved gardening, who had a wicked sense of humor, who could spend an entire afternoon lost in a good novel. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to set the shield down. The rage that had been a roaring bonfire became a steady, warm ember. The pain was still there, a scar on my heart that would never fully fade, but it no longer defined me. I began to see my sons not as monsters, but as tragic, broken men. I pitied them. And in that pity, I found the first glimmer of release. I realized that forgiving them wasn't an act of condoning their actions. It was an act of profound self-love. It was me, finally, choosing my own peace over their punishment. It was me taking back the last thing they had stolen from me, my joy. My life is quiet now, but it is a rich, warm quiet. Thomas is a constant, wonderful presence. We travel, we garden, we cook together. He has brought so much light back into my life. My house is once again a sanctuary, filled with friends and laughter and the smell of baking bread. I have not seen my sons. Ms. Miller handles the occasional, desperate communication from them. Perhaps one day, if they show true, profound remorse, I will be able to speak to them again. But it will be on my terms, in my time, in my house. I am no longer waiting for their calls. I am no longer defined by their actions. I survived the betrayal, I won the war, and I have finally, blessedly, found my way back home, not just to the house of wood and nails, but to the home within myself. I am 74 years old, and I am finally, truly free. What would you do in my place? Could you find it in your heart to forgive such a deep betrayal, not for their sake, but for your own? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm curious to hear from all of you, so please write me where you heard this story. Your support means the world. If you're still here, it means this story touched you. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing powerful true stories like Alice's to life. There are many other stories waiting for you. For those who feel especially generous, you can use the Super Thanks feature to support my work and help me bring more stories like this to light. With heartfelt greetings. Until next time.